Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, December the 5th, 2018. Show number 1197. Almost 1,200 shows.
Wow.
I'm Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
On tonight's show, we'll talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. We'll talk about a couple of stories that not directly in our wheelhouse, but things I found interesting this past week. One of them being Apple and Tumblr. It turns out that Apple booted Tumblr off of and Tumblr, Melissa, is a website where you can create your own website without having to know any code. So it's for those folks who just want to put content up without having to worry about CSS and HTML and all the fancy stuff. And anybody can run a Tumblr page. For better or worse, Tumblr is a place for, let's say, erotic art. Porn is in the eye of the beholder, so I don't want to label everything with the same brush. But Apple had found that there were instances of, on the Tumblr app, on the iOS devices, there were instances of what Apple said was child porn. So Apple said to Tumblr, that's it, we're booting you off the Apple Store until you get this issue fixed. Tumblr's solution was to ban all porn. The problem is what's defined as porn. What one person thinks is porn, the other person doesn't. So that's the issue. And we'll talk about Apple's responsibility in all this, because it looks like Tumblr might be on the way out. Not because of this, but it's also the people who own Tumblr, Verizon, don't really seem to care about Tumblr, and there's a whole bunch of other things going on. Well, let's talk about Apple and 5G. There was this really stupid story earlier in the week that Apple may miss the 5G boat. No, they're not. And we'll explain why later on in the show. The nice folks at ZAGG are allowing us to give away some of their product to a Canada or U.S. listener. Our apologies for that, but it's the rules of the game. ZAGG is going to give stuff away, but only to folks who live in Canada and the U.S. There's still time to get your entry form in. You can send me an email to zag@yourmaclifeshow.com. They've got a bunch of different products. They've got speakers from Bravin. They've got Mophie cases, Mophie.com. They've got wireless Bluetooth headphones. They've got invisible shield stuff for protecting your iPhone and your iPad. They got a whole bunch of products. So zag@yourmaclifeshow.com. And later on in the show, we will do a drawing for that. So thanks very much to the nice folks at zag.com. In our starting point photography segment, we're going to talk about gifts. 'Tis the season. Less than 20 days to go before Christmas. That's just nuts. It's just sneaking up on us so fast. Let's talk about some of the things to buy for the photographer in your life and some of the things not to buy the photographer in your life, and I'll explain that later on in that segment. So this morning, we wake up at our usual time, the alarm clocks go off, and I roll over and I look at my beautiful wife, my new bride, and we didn't talk about this. By the way, happy anniversary.
Yes, happy anniversary, sweetheart.
December 2nd was our 1-year anniversary of our wedded bliss. So I hope you had a good anniversary. We had a good anniversary.
We had a lovely anniversary. It was lovely.
So, thank you for...
Thank you, MacMan.
Thank you for marrying me.
Congratulations
on marrying me, too.
He's fine.
He's fine, yeah. What was I going to say? So, yes, I roll over and saw my beautiful bride, and she looks at me with her beautiful big green eyes and said, I heard a crash last night. And I was just like, okay, I'm just waking up.
Actually, my words were, sweetheart. And Shawn said, yes. I said, I heard a crash in the middle of the night. That was how I said it.
So, guys, how do you react to that news? My first thought was, do you know who was in the car? Because that's to me what a crash means.
Oh.
But I quickly threw that piece of information out of my brain because we live in a very quiet neighborhood, and a car crash I probably would have woken up to also. And my brain immediately went to, we have a cat.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Wallace cat. And the Wallace cat can be rambunctious, usually late at night.
He had been all night. He was in one of his moods, his horse galloping state through the house, killing the mat outside of the bedroom door. He kept me awake, and then the crash.
And was it quite a loud crash?
No.
No, sort of a gentle crash?
It wasn't as loud as what I thought it would be.
So we lie in bed for a little while, and I realized, okay, yeah, I've got to get up. I've got to get up and go deal with this. So I get up, I go to the living room, and sure enough, there it is, lying on the floor of the living room. This poor little tree. This poor little abused tree. This tree that did nothing to anybody, and yet it was lying there, inert, on the ground.
And we had such a lovely time getting that tree, and was so happy, and we had our tree on top of the car, and we had Christmas carols going on. We decorated it. We did a time lapse of decorating it. It was just it looked so lovely. I kept tinsel just up at the top so as to keep Wally safe. And then the one of the issues is that you've got to be careful when you pick these things up. So I came back to bed like, yeah, you know what? I just can't deal with this right now. I just don't want to deal with this right now. So I came back to bed. Of course, as you see, I had to take pictures of the tree, and I had to turn the lights on to show the tree was still alive. You know, I stepped on a bulb and broke it, and then came back to bed and said to Melissa, "Yep, tree down." Tree down.
Tree down. And Melissa immediately made an executive family decision that I had to go kill the cat. That the cat could.
How are you going to kill him?
The cat could no longer live with us. That the cat had to be euthanized immediately, and if I so choose, buried in the backyard. And I was in favor of that, if only because. And I love animals. I love human beings. No, I take it back. I love animals. I love my wife more. And if this little animal, as wonderful and cute and funny as he can be, is upsetting my wife in any way, shape, or form, I will kill this animal. I have no, Peter be damned. I will have no compunction about this. That's what I said when Wally first moved in, that if Wally didn't fit in with the family, if I didn't fit in and Wally didn't fit in with the family, we have another little cat,
my Mandy.
Mandy, who's very sweet and gentle
and old.
If Wally didn't fit in then, we'd send him off to the SPCA. And so this case, if Wally does this again, he's going to the SPCA. We're sending him off to go to the farm. He's going to have to go live with someone else.
Just so everyone knows, though, we've got cinder blocks on the tree, and we've weighed it down, and
So Monty says, so you get to decorate it again. See, Monty, that's what I thought, but not so much her. See, Monty, that's the face I get. See, you didn't look at it in that spirit of...
You need to stop now.
Spray it with cat repellent.
Yes.
What is cat repellent?
Water with acid in it, maybe?
No, it's not repellent.
No, I just thought spraying him with water might help.
The problem with that is that unless you do it as he's messing with the tree, he has no connection between why he's getting sprayed with water and...
Well, no. Then if I hear the noise in the night, I kick you, wake you up, and you run out and spray him with water.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's no direct connection between that. You have to catch him in the act.
Yes, but no, what I'm saying is if he's just knocked it down, you run out and you spray him.
I don't run anywhere. What's that noise?
That's the stepson having a shower.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
What's in a cat repellent?
Damon! I'm doing a show every Wednesday! God damn it!
Oh, dear.
Jesus! So...
It's been a good day.
Mosquito was someone else in the house screwing up. Exactly. So... I mean, I've never heard of cat repellent, bear repellent.
No, I haven't. Does it have like a pepper?
There's not a lot you can do. I mean, you can. And the other problem is we can't tie the tree down because there's no anchor points. My mom used to do that when we were kids. She would tie the tree to something in the wall to keep it to make it, not because it would fall over, but my mother wanted it perfectly straight.
It's not straight anymore.
It's
it
not.
was.
It's a little crooked. So you don't see it as getting to redecorate again. You think somehow he's destroyed the spirit of that particular tree.
I decorated that tree with love,
Yes,
and
you did.
And I know, and we even went and bought more lights, and I just was so happy with the way it was, and it's just not the same now.
How is it not the same?
Anyway, it's just not. Okay, it's got. I'm just not. It's not the same. My heart wasn't in it.
Some of you will notice that during the show, at various points, as the light hits her, Melissa does have tinsel on her forehead.
Yes.
Which not tinsel, sorry, glitter, which is very cute.
Yes. Yeah.
We've already given out our first present.
Yes. She loves it. She sent a photograph of it, actually.
We found in a little shop, and I love going to these little shops for little things. Most times these places are kind of expensive, but this little shop called Whimsy here in Gibson.
It's a beautiful store.
Oh, it just sells lovely little, and it's not kitschy stuff either. It's kind of interesting, cool stuff.
So Corey sent a photograph.
So,
she's so happy. She loves it.
I can't zoom in on your broken ass phone. Oh my God.
So it's one of those lovely, beautiful big balls that you put on your tree that has a light up scene inside of it.
It's got so you can kind of see that bright light right dead center.
It's beautiful.
I don't know if you can. Oh, there we go. So it's got a little Christmas tree scene in it, and on the top of the Christmas tree in it, we'll get a better picture of this later, is the a little light.
Mm-hmm.
It's a plastic see-through ball, and the bottom of it's a light switch, and so the top of the Christmas tree lights up, which I think is really, really cute.
Yeah, I thought I'm going to post that one on.
Oh
Christmas
yes, there we
Eve.
go. There we go. So that's a better shot of how it lights up. The tree lights up inside. It's very, very pretty. So I like that. So that's lovely. This is going to be a hard Christmas for you, I predict.
I guess.
This will be your first Christmas without your number 2 son.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be off to Smithers, British Columbia, visiting his dad. He'll be there for a couple of weeks. He's looking forward to it immensely. He's going to be going snow skiing and doing all that kind of snow
Ice
stuff
skating.
that we don't get to do down here because it's too warm. Thank God. But he'll be having fun freezing his butt off up there in Smithers, and I will be doing my damnedest to keep her distracted.
I'll be fine
and happy. No, you won't. Christmas morning will be the worst Christmas morning ever.
It's going to be a tough one.
It is.
It's okay. He's having fun and he's expanding his horizons, and it's all good.
You gonna power through it, are you?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I am.
I think
as long as I get breakfast in bed.
Of course you do.
I'm going to suck this for all it's worth.
And I think we have enough whiskey. What the hell, Monty?
What?
It's currently
what is
33
that?
degrees Fahrenheit. 33 is 1.
So what's 0?
0 is 32 Fahrenheit.
32. Okay.
Down to 22. So 22 is about -7. That's in Atlanta, Georgia.
But I was going to say Monty lives in the South.
Apparently not. That sucks. Later on in the show, we're going to be talking about gifts to give to the photographer in your life. Stay tuned for that in our starting point photography segment. We're also going to talk about the hotel in Lisbon. We had to make a change to the hotel, and I'll explain why later on in the starting point photography segment. Up next, though, we're going to talk to our friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about Apple and 5G and Apple and Tumblr. All that and much more coming up. This is your Mac Life. Very much for joining me here this Wednesday evening. On our phone, we've got our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. We were just talking in the break there that you were making a pot roast with your Instapot.
No, beef stew.
Beef stew with your Instapot. Folks, if you don't have an Instapot, if you can't cook, get an Instapot. If you can cook, get an Instapot.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. I've got a dozen recipes I can send you for all kinds of things. You can make cheesecake in them. You can make beef, and the great thing about the beef stuff is you buy these cheap ass cuts of beef, the stew beef that cost you pennies a pound. Toss it in there and let it sit for an hour, and boom, it makes magic meat. It's fantastic.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic.
I made in the slow cooker. I made a pot roast last week. I was telling Jim, I put this big hunk of pot roast meat with a bunch of potatoes and carrots in at 9 o'clock. Left it alone till 5 o'clock, and then it was just the most delicious meat ever. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and that's on slow cook. If you do something like that on pressure cook,
Yep.
then it takes like an hour.
Oh yeah. Stuff that would normally take you 4 hours takes an hour in a pressure cooker. So.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I'm sure a lot of people are afraid of pressure cookers because they've heard horror stories of them exploding and blowing up and taking out your house. That I don't know if that did happen, but if it did happen, it happened in the 70s.
Or the 50s. Pressure cookers have been around since the 50s.
Yes, exactly. And the pressure cookers you buy nowadays from Crock-Pot or whoever you're buying them from, they don't have those issues anymore. They've got pressure bleed valves, and they've got all kinds of different ways to be safe. So you don't be worried about pressure cookers anymore. They're fantastic. Get one for yourself for Christmas.
I'm glad I could help. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, have a good week.
Bye-bye.
I had an interesting conversation with this guy, just guy on the interwebs on Twitter. And, now you may know the guy. I think his name is Dave Mark of some kind. Yeah, that's right.
I've heard of him.
You've heard of him.
Smart fellow.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I know you would.
Dave said on Twitter, Apple pulled the Tumblr app. My understanding is child porn was the trigger. Tumblr bans all adult content. Lots of it gets mislabeled, goes in a tailspin. This is a looming disaster for Tumblr. And also, all of that, I agree with Dave. But then Dave says, I'd like to see Tim Cook and company step in to help Tumblr here. Do you think Apple has any responsibility towards Tumblr to assist them in any of issues that they're having?
No. I mean, they don't have any. Apple has a responsibility to themselves and to their customers. Yeah. That's about it. I see where Dave is going.
Yes.
But, Apple has tried this whole website thing before.
Yep.
Never worked out, as a lot of their services don't. But, yeah, Apple should not be involved in Tumblr or anything like it.
There's no need. This is not an issue of Apple's making. Yes, the impetus may be Apple's decision to ban Tumblr from the iOS store, but that's got nothing to do, realistically, with Tumblr's website or Tumblr's business model, however they sell ads. And I have no idea, by the way, how Tumblr makes money. I don't use Tumblr. I don't think I've ever visited Tumblr website, so I don't have any idea about that. But Apple is taking control of their walled garden. If that affects things outside the walls, Apple doesn't have a responsibility for that, do they?
No. They, I mean, again, I see where Dave is going, but no, I don't think that's a wise move for Apple at all. I mean, even if they did try and help out, all the cleaning up that they would have to do, it's not worth it. I mean,
one of the things I said to Dave that, and I'm not sure whether it's because I'm too simplistic, but to me it seemed like the easy solution for Tumblr would be to split itself into 2 or 3 as required. You'd have one G-rated Tumblr, one PG-13 rated Tumblr, and one X-rated Tumblr. I don't see how that would be a problem for Tumblr. That way they could move all of that content that some might find objectionable to a separate walled-off area of Tumblr.com, and then their G-rated stuff or PG-rated stuff would probably be allowed back into the Apple Store.
Well, yeah, you're probably right, but I don't see. I think over the past maybe, I don't know what, 5 years or so, when you started hearing about all the X-rated content on Tumblr. Yeah. And that's really when things started to take a dive. And I think a lot of people started to avoid Tumblr type websites because they were afraid of where they would end up on the service itself. And that's too bad for Tumblr because, by all accounts, when it started out, it was a great service.
And make no mistake about it, there is a lot of content on Tumblr that is in line with what you would call erotic as opposed to pornographic. And I know that's a fine line that some folks may not see the distinction of, but certainly there are images, is content out there that we can all agree is, for lack of a better term, air quotes, sexy, but not porn, right? Like if you put up a picture of a Rubens painting and the woman in the Rubens painting is naked, we can all agree that's not porn. The problem is Tumblr is now with this new algorithm, which obviously has lost its mind, is blocking that content as being pornographic. Well, that's Tumblr's fault for going too far with a bad AI, not Apple's fault for booting them out of their walled garden.
Yeah. I mean, there's no real argument there.
Josh Centers from Tidbit said Verizon probably just sees Tumblr as not worth the trouble and doesn't care if it dies. Josh then goes on to say, despite that, Apple is still exerting its dictates on the open web, and that's cause for alarm. Do you agree with that?
No.
I disagree with Josh on it too. I said Apple is dictating what happens in its own walled garden, not outside of it. Like I said before, what Apple's doing is affecting content outside of its walled garden, but Apple isn't directly limiting that. I think that's what Josh is saying, that by Apple's actions, it censors content outside of Apple's website. But I think that's a distinction without a difference.
It's not like Tim Cook called Tumblr and said, "Hey, I don't like the content you're putting up. Stop putting up that content."
Yeah.
No, that would be exerting undue influence. But to say, we don't like the type of content that's on that site that's being accessed by our customers.
Yeah.
So we're just going to stop having the app in that store. And that's perfectly fine. They're well within their rights to do that.
This does bump up against the issue that Apple has had in the past, and something you and I have talked about in the past. Apple does tend to be overly cautious if you want to be kind, overly prudish if you want to be unkind. Do you agree with that? Do you think Apple sometimes just gets too grandmotherly?
Well, I would be interested to see what the app was registered as in the App Store. Is it registered as an adult app, or is it registered as like a PG app that anybody can download?
Yeah,
I don't know the answer to that because I don't have the app and never downloaded it. Yeah. So, if it was registered as a family-friendly app, well, the content on there is not exactly family-friendly, all of it. So, it wouldn't even be blocked in parental restrictions. Kids would be able to download that app.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? None of this actually matters because Apple can do whatever it wants in its walled garden. And if they don't want Tumblr there, then Tumblr's not there.
Yeah.
If they decide that they don't want your podcast there, then your podcast is not going to be there. I mean, then that's it. They could find you offensive, which most people do, but somehow you manage to still have a place there.
Yeah,
so,
Apple doesn't have a responsibility to shore up your business model. If you've built a business, and
you totally skipped by the fact that I called you offensive.
I did. Well, yeah, because I'm so used to it. I didn't even hear you. The words didn't even register in my headphones because.
Okay. All right. But I was just making sure that I wasn't cut off there because I actually wanted you to know what I said. So.
But Apple doesn't have a responsibility to shore up Tumblr's business. If you've built a business, however Tumblr has, and if some percentage of that business is based on content that a percentage of the population is going to find objectionable, you got to expect this kind of stuff to happen. Whether it was Apple cutting you off, or maybe some service provider cuts you off, or the government cuts you off, you got to expect this kind of stuff and have a better solution in place rather than just, okay, we're going to ban all boobs.
Well, I don't think that this is how Tumblr started out. I don't think that, being the purveyor of all these X-rated type of sites is how they saw themselves when they first kicked it off, but that's how it's ended up. So, I guess this is what happened.
Yeah. I have little sympathy for Tumblr in this regard. I have a lot of sympathy for artists who were using Tumblr as a way to get their work seen by others. And one of the things that a lot of people are saying is, well, what's the big deal? All they have to do is open up a Squarespace site or a WordPress site and they can put their content up there. But the idea of aggregating stuff on Tumblr brought a lot more eyeballs than if you were just Joe Blow on WordPress.com trying to get your art seen by others, either for sale or just because you want it seen by others. So that's not just telling people, oh, open up a WordPress or a Squarespace account is not really the solution. There's got to be a better way for Tumblr to handle this stuff. And I think the biggest issue is whatever algorithm Tumblr is using to decide what are boobs and what aren't is a shitty algorithm. And this problem wouldn't have happened if Tumblr had a better way of dealing with it.
Well, I mean, there's always a better way to deal with everything.
Yeah,
and
true.
They didn't find it. So
let's move on. Bloomberg seems to have been really hitting on 3 cylinders of an 8-cylinder car in the last little while. They're still getting slammed over that ridiculous story that Apple's servers had been hacked. Now, Mark Gurman is saying Apple will wait until at least 2020 to release a 5G iPhone. Now, that's interesting because the headline has changed since I grabbed this story. The headline originally was, Apple is said to miss rapid 5G takeoff, sitting out the tech shift. Let's look at it from that point of view. Do you think Apple is going to, if the rumors are true, miss the 5G takeoff?
Well, there's a lot involved in a technology shift. 3G to 4G, 4G to LTE. There's a whole lot involved in that. There's the chips, there's the rollout, there's so much involved. So saying what we don't know enough detail, I don't believe, to say that Apple is going to make it or miss it. I mean, is it possible that Apple is going to release a new phone without any kind of a high-speed 5G thing? Of course it is. Yeah. Because what if 5G rolls out and it's only available in Silicon Valley? Yeah. And that's it. But I mean, typically that's not even where some of these high-speed networks have come. They've gone to, like Atlanta or, somewhere in Texas or, so if that's the only place where it's available and the chips are so expensive that Apple would have to jack the prices up in order to make everything work, is that the best use of the technology? Mm-hmm. No. Apple has been known to wait before, and then they storm through and take charge of everything. So I'm not really sure that we have enough information on 5G, the rollout, the chips, everything that would matter to Apple in coming out with this to say whether they're going to make it or miss it.
I don't think I can almost promise that Apple isn't going to be one of the first companies that rolls this out. They don't need to be. Like you said, the vast majority of locales that will have 5G are going to be, as you said, Silicon Valley, Chicago, LA, New York, those kinds of places. Same as with the 3G rollout, the 4G rollout, the LTE.
Yeah,
this is the way it happens.
Exactly the same. It's always the way.
And Apple always waits until all the proverbial bugs have been shaken out, lets others go ahead of them, and then they come in with their big guns, the iPhone 12, whatever it's going to be, with 5G that will blow everybody away because it'll be faster and more battery life, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
How these people, and I've seen several stories with that same slant that Gurman had, that Apple's going to be missing something. The vast majority of Apple's customers, people who do buy the iPhone, I'd be willing to bet you don't know if they're on 4G or LTE. They don't even know what 4G or LTE is. And they sure as hell are not going to know what 5G is.
No, but they may ask because it's in the news.
Yeah, they certainly may ask because it's in the news, and then the response is, "Don't worry about it." I would not recommend to someone if you have LTE, you should go buy a Samsung device that has 5G just because it has 5G.
And you won't get 5G.
That's right. Depending on where you go, where you travel, you're not going to get 5G. It's
good luck with that.
It's a buzzword thing. And what it is because Verizon and AT&T and those guys need new things to grab customers, because the North American market is saturated. Everybody who wants a cell phone has a cell phone. So all AT&T and Verizon can do is steal customers from each other. And the way they're going to do that is by promoting these services that one has, the other doesn't, and leapfrogging over each other. But for the average consumer, it doesn't make a damn bit of difference.
You know what? I remember doing an interview, I think it was with CNN or something like that a few years back, about NFC.
Yeah.
And the fact that Apple didn't have NFC, and I want to say I was actually on vacation with my family at the time, and so I'm thinking it was summertime. So Apple's coming out with a new phone in September, and they said, "Do you think Apple's going to have NFC?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, then, basically they're doomed."
Yeah.
And I said, "Do you have a phone with NFC?" And they said, "Yes." So it was, maybe a Samsung or whatever. And I said, "Okay. And how many times in the last week have you used it?" And they said, "Well, none, because there's no place to really use it." I said, "Exactly. So why would Apple put NFC in a phone when it's basically a checklist item?"
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's no actual use for it. You can say that you have it, but you can't use it. So tell me where they're going wrong and why they're doomed.
Yeah.
And, they couldn't answer the question. I think they actually get frustrated, and just that was the end of the interview.
Well, I know that feeling with you.
But it's so true.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of these new technologies are exactly the same, whether it's 5G or, NFC or whatever. Is there a use for this technology?
No.
Can you go out today and use it? When Apple comes out with, like the iPhone XS Max, and you have Face ID, and you have LTE, and you have wireless, and you have Bluetooth, and, better Bluetooth or whatever. There's a use for everything that's in that phone.
Yeah, sure.
But for some of this stuff, there just isn't. So why? For a checklist item, that's not what Apple does.
And make no mistake about it, from what I've read about 5G, it's going to be cool. It's going to be a quantum leap in speed for what we can do. It will also enable, sadly, a lot more devices to be connected to the internet. I don't think we need many more devices connected to the internet, like for refrigerators. As Monty says, last I read, the 5G standard hasn't even been fully ratified or accepted yet by the IEEE.
And Monty's exactly right, which is why, we're so far away from being able to do it, because until that's actually ratified and accepted as a standard, they can't even make chips for it. Some companies will, but they can't reliably make chips for a standard that does not exist.
Yeah, that's right. and these reporters and people like Gurman should know better, but I know he's doing it because he's a click whore. I understand that. But these people should know better that Apple doesn't lead the way in these things anymore, if they ever did. Apple is Apple is more than happy to let others develop the underlying stuff, and then Apple comes along and adds their panache to it to make it even better than what Sprint or Verizon or Motorola ever thought that device or that product was ever going to be.
So, right, and let's be clear about this. I mean, the development of a new standard for 5G or LTE or 4G, whatever, is something that everybody has a stake in. So, you know, this isn't, there's nothing that Apple can do like skipping NFC and then coming out with Apple Pay.
Yeah.
You know, that was very cool. Well, and it became available pretty quickly all around.
Yeah.
But so I'm sorry. But something like 5G or LTE is being ratified by a separate body that everybody has a stake in. So there's not much that they can do to show much more panache and hey, look what we did, except to say, hey, 5G is finally here.
Yep.
It may be a year after it's announced, but 5G is finally here, and our phone supports it.
Yeah. Let's move on and talk about the interesting story I posted up on The Loop, I think yesterday or the day before, with regards to Apple's offering a deal for members of the military and veterans. I think it's a fantastic idea. The Veterans and Military Purchase Program is a benefit provided by Apple to current and veteran members of the U.S. military, National Guard, and Reserve. Basically what they're doing is they're allowing members of the military to buy Apple products at a lower price. My problem with this is, why is this just happening now? Why is it only 10%? And why hasn't it rolled out to other nations' militaries? I don't know about your dad. I know Jim and I are both from the same city, Halifax. It's a naval port. It's a NATO port. So we've been around sailors either directly or indirectly, certainly most of our younger lives. My entire family was military. I firmly believe that U.S., Canada, Britain, Denmark, Russia, we don't do enough for our military service members. We don't even pay them enough. No kidding. Let alone benefits. So just hard, cold cash. We don't pay these guys enough. Is this Apple being a little chintzy at only 10%?
No, I mean, okay. First, let's take a look at different countries. We don't know that there isn't something that would disallow veterans in another country, and even if there isn't, this could be something that Apple's trying here first, which makes sense. They are a U.S. company based in the U.S. They are a worldwide company.
Yes.
But I think Apple should be given some praise for recognizing veterans and military people. One of my biggest pet peeves was always that people didn't recognize November the 11th, Armistice Day, Remembrance Day, Veterans Day, whatever you want to call it, as a true day to give thanks to all of the people. You know, my grandparents and, you know, everybody that gave lives in the war, and not just World War II or World War One, but every war since, and even up to today. I mean, I have gone up to people in the airport that were in military uniform and just shook their hand and said thanks. I bought people beers. I've bought people meals just to say thanks, and not just from Canada, you know, from other nations in the world. And it's not. I think that in this, Apple should be given some credit and say, okay, maybe they will open it up to other countries and, you know, show some support for those veterans and military personnel.
What about the idea? What about the idea? The 10% discount seems awfully low. Apple averages 38% profit margin on their devices, so they have a lot more leeway than 10% to offer a discount to veterans and military members.
And the government could also pay them so that their families don't have to go on food stamps and things like that. So, you know, Apple is. I get your point. I don't disagree with you. I mean, Apple could give it to them at cost and say, here, thank you.
Yep.
But before we get to the point where private companies are doing that, I think that the governments around the world need to step up and say, you know what? Here you go. We want to thank you for the service. We want to pay you a decent salary. And they should do that for teachers. And, you know, there are other professions in our society that deserve a lot more and don't get it.
Agreed.
And, you know, this goes to a whole other argument. I don't think that any company that wants to give a discount to veterans and active military personnel, any company that wants to give them a discount of any kind, I think should be praised.
Yeah, I don't disagree. My personal feeling about it, though, is that you should do as much as you possibly can. You don't wait for the government to step in and do their part, because the government will or won't, regardless.
And they haven't.
And they haven't. I agree.
They haven't waited. They haven't waited. They went ahead and did this.
No, Apple could have done this 10, 20, 30 years ago. They waited.
I know that, but they did it now.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's never too late. Should they have done it, you know, when the very first Lisa was announced? Okay, well, you know, that's not what they were thinking then, and maybe that's not what they were thinking up until now. But now they are. So good. Do it.
Oh, no, I agree. I give them props for doing it. Too late is better than not at all. The other issue I have is that it's just such a small amount. 10% for a lot of military folks is not going to be enough to enable them to buy a new iPad for their kids this Christmas. Apple could easily afford 25% discount on an iPad for a veteran. It's going to be minimal off their bottom line when it comes to the number of iPads or iPhones or Macs they sell on a yearly basis. So for me, I want you to do as much as you can, not the bare minimum, as much as you can right out of the gate. I'll give you props for doing it, but you can do more.
Well, and you know, we often look at companies like Apple and say, why can't you do more?
Yep.
But I think if we look at the larger responsibility, there are other organizations that we can say, hey, why don't you do more?
Yep, I agree.
You know, you're the one that is responsible for this. So I don't care. And when I said any I don't care if it's Samsung, I don't care if it's Apple, any company that is willing to give a military benefit to those personnel, I think should be applauded. I don't care what company it is or what service they have. You know, even Tumblr.
There was a story on the Verge last week. Google keeps failing to understand tablets, and that got me wanting to flip the statement around. If Google keeps failing to understand tablets, most companies fail to understand tablets. There's often been said here or in other places, there is no tablet market. There's only an iPad market. If Google keeps failing to understand tablets, what do you think it is about Apple that allows them to understand tablets? Why is Apple succeeding where others are failing miserably?
You know, that's a really good question.
Oh, thank
And
you
it's
very much.
funny. It's funny when you look at the iPad, because I'm not. The iPad is a tremendous device, but the iPad didn't take the world by storm like the iPhone did. And I think a lot of what makes the iPad successful is the familiarity with the iPhone and iOS.
Mm-hmm.
So when kids and young people take, even older people take an iPad, they immediately know what to do with that device because chances are they've used an iPhone. And that familiarity, I think, has led a lot of people to purchase an iPad over a Mac, over any other type of PC.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's really funny to sit down and watch a kid use an iPad because they know what to do.
Yeah. Instinctively.
They know exactly what to do.
Yep.
I've said before about my neighbor's kids who are, you know, like 5 and 7 or 8 or whatever. I don't ask their ages. I don't care. But when they're here, you know, that app about stars, you know, you point it up at the sky and it's AR.
Yeah.
And it's, you get the stars and it shows you the constellations and stuff like that. They know, iPad or iPhone, they know instinctively what to do. Their mother will unlock her phone and the kids will grab it, put on that app and walk around the yard looking. They just know what to do. Now, I think part of the reason that if all of tablets ran iOS, it would probably be the same. So I'm saying that the experience of iOS may be the differentiator.
Yeah. I think one of the comments that the Verge story is talking about is that Android was originally built and developed for phones, and that it doesn't scale well to tablets, where Apple either intentionally or by happenstance, by luck of the draw, they were originally developing the iPad first. Steve Jobs famously said that they were working on a tablet long before they were working on the phone. So maybe that helped them in developing iOS that is pretty damn good on both devices. Yes, there are some issues on the iPad, especially now with the new iPad Pros, but they're still fairly minor compared to the issues I've read that people are having with Android on Google tablets, where it's just a complete mess quite often, where it's really obvious that the iOS was meant for a much smaller screen, and a lot of things don't scale very well on Google tablets.
Well, and it's not only that. I find that that Android is a very slow, responsive operating system. As fast as the hardware purports to be, when you actually put Android on it, I find it difficult to use. Yeah. Just because it's so lackluster in its response. I mean, when I tap something on my iPhone, it moves, it goes. Yeah. When you tap, you know you've tapped something.
Yeah.
And because the app immediately or the OS immediately responds to what you're doing. Now, that's both hardware and software. So, but when I tap something on a brand new Samsung phone or what's another company that makes those, HTC or something, you know, it's lagging. I mean, that would drive me nuts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen it.
I don't know how people use that.
Neither do I. Yep.
I really don't. I would be so frustrated in using that. And iPhone, people that have older iPhones think they have a problem. Try getting an Android.
That's right.
Even a brand new one.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yep. Yeah, it's surprisingly bad. Like I said, we often complain about these issues on the iPhone, but I've had occasion to use friends' Android phones. I'm literally like, seriously? This is the way it works? Are you kidding me?
Well, I tap and then I tap again.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, does it not recognize me? No, it's just so slow that's how long it takes for it to come in.
Exactly.
For an app to open. And, to me, that's not good.
Folks, we're talking to Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. He's here each and every week. His podcast is up on the iTunes store. It's called The Dalrymple Report. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Shawn.
Talk to you later. See ya.
Bye.
Yeah, it's very funny. Like I said, we often complain about things on the iPhone, but if you ever get a chance to use someone else's Android phone, you will literally be appalled at how bad the experience is, how just truly awful it is to use those. I still remember I was the guy who was David Pogue's tech editor on Windows Vista, the missing manual. And it was funny because when I'd never tech edited before, but I am a fairly good copy editor. Tech edit the missing manual book. And even though I never tech edited anything before, I knew what the process was. It's basically you go through every single word, every single action, every single capitalization on the device, and make sure that it matched up with what David had written in the Vista missing manual. So literally, if he said in the missing manual, click here to get this window, I had to use David loaned me a Windows PC running a beta of missing manual. I went and did that action to make sure it was the exact same. So I literally did everything in the missing manual. If you've seen the missing manuals, they're thick books. The Vista book, I think, was probably 500 to 700 pages. And these are pages of instructions of how to use Vista. And I'm doing this, and I'm doing everything you could possibly do in Vista. So it's everything from setting up a printer to hooking up to the internet to using Word documents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was possibly the worst computing experience of my life because I'm doing the writing part of it on my Macintosh laptop running Word, and I'm doing the tech editing, the tech actions on this Windows laptop. And as I'm doing these things on the Windows machine, I kept saying to myself, why are they doing it this way? This is the hard way. The actions that they had literally stolen from Apple, they stole badly. They stole and then changed it for no good reason. Maybe just the simple fact that it was different. It was an awful, awful computing experience. And as MacMan says, if you think Vista sucked, you should have tried Windows ME. It was very surprising. So I have to keep that. I keep that story in mind and the Android stuff in mind when I complain about Apple and some of the ways that Apple does things, because I got to remember it's a lot worse in other places. It's bad. It's sometimes bad for us, but it's freaking torturous for Windows users and Android users. When we come back, we'll be doing our starting point photography segment. Stay tuned. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining us here on the starting point photography segment of the show. Right off the top, let me talk about Lisbon. We had originally chosen a hotel, Tesoro de Baixa, and I'm really upset I won't be able to say that anymore because I was saying it so well. But there is a website called TripMasters. Let me see if I can't pull this up for you guys. TripMasters is a organization I'd never heard of, and you have to keep in mind I have been pulling what little hair I have out over the last 2 months, Melissa can attest to this, trying to find tour operators that can package up deals or that have good package deals. I've gone through Orbitz and Expedia and Travelocity and everything known to man, Flight Hub, Cheap Air, all that kind of stuff. One of the problems that we have, Melissa and I personally, me personally, is we have specific needs and requirements for the flight to Lisbon. One of the things you find out very quickly when you live here in Vancouver, we could not possibly be in a worse situation when it comes to flying. Canada is a huge, huge country. Second largest country in area in the world. But it's got a very, very small population. So a lot of our flights have to go through Toronto. Even if you're flying out of my hometown, Halifax, to Europe, you often had to fly to Toronto west for 2-3 hours before you could fly east to Europe. It's a really frustrating, aggravating situation. So we found flights from Vancouver to Toronto, and then they would have a 16-hour layover in Toronto. I never want to spend any time in Toronto, let alone 16 freaking hours at Pearson Airport. No interest in that whatsoever. And then you would fly to Frankfurt, and there'd be a 5-hour layover in Frankfurt. No offense to any German listeners, I don't want to sit in Frankfurt for 5 hours either, or Amsterdam, or London. There was these huge, ridiculously long layovers, and it was just driving me nuts trying to get flights that were affordable, but also, the other issue is, I'm not allowed, legally, to fly through or into the United States. So I couldn't go to, people have suggested, well, drive down to Seattle, because Seattle doesn't have these kind of issues that we have up here in Vancouver. So I couldn't even fly to, or drive down to Seattle and then take flights from Seattle to Europe. I couldn't take a flight from Vancouver to LA and then to Europe, or Vancouver, New York, or Newark. I'm not saying that wrong. It's another area called Newark in New Jersey. So I just cannot go through the United States. So that added cost to our trip too. So it all just became just this really just frustrating nightmare. And then coming back, it was the same issue. There was one flight that was 23 hours in Zurich. No, I'm not going to spend a day in Zurich. All right. Neither Melissa and I have an interest in rolling our luggage through Zurich.
Amsterdam could be interesting.
Maybe.
I haven't been to Amsterdam.
But even then, at the end of it, But Amsterdam might be a place we go to and so what we ended up having to do, because remember we were trying to go from Vancouver to Florence, spend a week in Florence, and then from Florence to Lisbon, and then Lisbon back home. But that added $1,500 to the cost. So it ended up being, all right, we'll try to go from Vancouver to Florence, Florence to Lisbon, Lisbon back to Florence, Florence to Vancouver. Oh, dear sweet baby Jesus. It was just driving me nuts. So then the issue became, we just don't have enough money for the Florence trip this time around. And it kills me to say that, because Melissa has never been to Florence. I've been to Florence once, and it's a beautiful, beautiful city. I'd love to go. Melissa has always wanted to go. I think you said it's the only place in Europe you actually do want to go that you haven't been before. Mm-hmm. Like, you have no interest in Paris.
No.
You have no interest in Rome.
Oh,
You've no
possibly.
Interest,
Florence more so.
You have no interest in going to Greece.
Not really.
No interest in going back to London. Yeah, see,
go to London for a weekend. It would be fun. If I had money, I would go to London.
And the other thing is, Melissa has never had a honeymoon. We had a honeymoon last year, but we brought 2 children with us. That's not the way to do it.
Really?
So
I'm thinking of getting rid of the 2 that I have now too. So the rest of our life can be a honeymoon.
That would be good. So I really, really, really wanted to take my wife, my new bride, to a city she's never been to, a romantic, beautiful city, so that we could have a real honeymoon.
And we could walk everywhere. And
we found a fantastic Airbnb, which we have to cancel now.
Oh, no. Anyway, yeah, okay.
Anyway. But we just didn't get the students for this that we expected it to. So what we've had to do is we've canceled, sadly, the Florence trip. What we'll probably end up going to do is the next photo workshop we do in Europe next March will be in Florence. Mm-hmm. So that'll you'll be working on your honeymoon, but it'll still be fun. So we've canceled our personal Florence segment of the trip. And what we're going to end up doing is going to Lisbon from Vancouver. So that'll cut $1,000 off, airfare and hotel. And food and wine. So we'll go straight to Lisbon. But even that, trying to find those things was a bear. And then I found, I'm going to cover up Melissa's face with this one. My apologies, Melissa.
That's okay.
Then I found this website called Tripmasters. Yes, plural, tripmasters.com. And I don't know where I found it. I think it was an email that I got. I get dozens of emails from travel companies all the time. And I saw they had this really wild deal, Vancouver, London, Edinburgh, Dublin, for that's airfare and hotels for less than $1,000.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
The hell? So I started doing some more research on Tripmasters, and it turns out they have the best flight deals of anyone I've seen. One of the other issues that we have because of where we live is for us to get to Vancouver International Airport, ironically, it's only about 30 miles as the crow flies.
It's really easy to do public transit-wise.
But we have to get on a ferry and then take the buses or the car to the airport. And the ferries don't go overnight. So a lot of the flights we were seeing, we were leaving Lisbon at 5 a.m. and not arriving in Vancouver until 9 or 10 p.m. that evening. Well, the ferries don't run that late here. So we would be stuck in Vancouver for a night staying at an airport hotel for $100, $150. So that was a concern. So I finally found a flight that doesn't have insane layovers, where we go from Vancouver to Heathrow Airport, 2 hours in Heathrow to Lisbon, and we get into Lisbon at like 4 in the afternoon. Yay. And then the return flight is 10 a.m. out of Lisbon, so it's not an insane 5 a.m. flight. 10 a.m. out of Lisbon, and we get back into Vancouver. So we go to Heathrow again, another 2 hours in Heathrow, and then on to Vancouver, and we get into Vancouver at 3 in the afternoon. Yay!
So we can get on the ferry and come home.
So we can get on the ferry and come home. So that's why we've had to make this change, because this deal is only available through Tripmasters. So what you do, and MacMan says he's already booked hotels in Paris and Beaulieu for
So
Normandy.
exciting. I'm so excited for him.
Susan says, let's find out for ACV to Lisbon. 1720 is the cheapest. But Susan, keep in mind, that's for two people. Okay, so let me just do this. Is it AC? Yeah, Eureka, although it might not be for Eureka, California. That's a small town. Arriving March 22nd, staying for 8 nights. 1 room, 2 adults. Because that's what I first saw. When I first saw the price, I thought, oh, well, that's obviously too expensive. But then I saw it was for 2 adults. And the price was ridiculously cheap for 2 adults.
Great.
Yeah, average price. Now I'm seeing average price per person, Susan, from Eureka, California, for $1,100. And that's airfare and hotel for 8 nights for $1,100. 2 people, $2,300. That's not bad.
That's pretty good. And it's a nice place.
It is very nice. We'll get to that in a second. The $1,100 airfare, we can't fly out of Vancouver to Lisbon for $1,100.
Nope.
We're not talking about a hotel. Just the flight. I can't find a flight that inexpensive that's got reasonable, takeoff times. So that's why I switched this over to Tripmaster. So tripmasters.com, check it out for all your flying needs, just in case that it's something that you guys might be able to use for your own personal stuff. But check out the website, startingpointphotography.com. There's more details there. We're going to be staying at the utterly delightful looking Hotel Borgia Chados.
That's a nice one, too.
I'm probably saying that wrong. But this was on my list of the hotels I wanted to stay in months before, but I couldn't get them to email me back about discounts and price changes and things like that. But it looks like a tremendously weird, cool, funky hotel. The pictures on the website make it look like it's this really eclectic,
it's very funky and
very
eclectic,
funky looking place. The rooms look fantastic. This is you're watching on the video. This is one of the sitting areas. I think this is one of the hotel bars with this amazing curved roof that looks like there's brick on the top. One of the upper scale rooms is this gorgeous gold colored room. The restaurant looks like it's got this Baroque ceiling on it, which looks very, very cool. Another one of the bigger, larger rooms, the suites, has this really neat look. The views look fantastic. It's only a couple minutes away from the center of town, which is the place that I wanted to be, in the area of the Santa Justa lift. So if you're looking for places, that's sort of where you want to stay, in the hotels around the Santa Justa lift, because from there, the Elevadore Santa Justa. So that's the central location that you want to look for. So our previous hotel, the Tesoro de Baixa, was only 5 minutes from the Santa Justa lift, and this hotel is 4 minutes away. There's all kinds of bars, all kinds of restaurants in that general area. So it's going to be hopefully a really cool hotel. It's reviewed well on TripAdvisor and Booking.com and all the usual places where you get this kind of information. So yeah, Susan, I don't know where you got that price of $1,720, because like I said, I saw $1,100 when I checked it, but it might make the difference of which flights you take anyway. Does that mean that Susan and Greg might be coming with us?
I know. That's what I was thinking. I thought, why is Susan asking that?
I know. Susan. Mapgan says, one thing is to make sure they're not booking you in basic economy if you book through that site. Yeah, keep an eye on that. Monty says, there are some travel deals to Europe I've seen in Groupon that have made me say that. An all-exclusive travel package, I can't find flights for even half that price. How do they do that? It's because they just package these things up. They just get these deals from hotels. Susan said that was on United's website. So United, Susan, I don't understand. You're saying the $1,720 is the cheapest on United's website for flights? Because that's insane. Just for the flight. That is insane. Yeah. For her to fly from Eureka, California is $1,720. Where these guys are saying Eureka, California, one person with hotel for 8 days is $1,100. That's insane. That's fantastic. That's so tripmasters.com. I'm trying to get a hold of these guys because the next thing we want to do is, once we get this one together, is look at doing these in other places. Vancouver, Florence, Dublin. I'd love to do photography in Dublin. Even places like New York City, for those folks who've never been. You've never been in New York City.
I'd love to go to Edinburgh, too.
Edinburgh? Have you ever been to Edinburgh before?
No.
Neither have I.
I'd love to go there.
That trip, I would say I'd do maybe 2 days in London.
Oh, yeah. And
just
then,
to see the main sites.
Oh, yeah.
Tower Bridge.
I've seen all that. I don't need to.
I would do 4 days in Dublin, 3 days in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Because those are places to me that would be a whole lot cooler.
Edinburgh is supposed to be a beautiful city.
So on this segment of StartingPointPhotography.com, as we said earlier, 'tis the season to give and receive. If you have a photographer in your family, let's talk about some gifts that you may want to get them or yourself, and some gifts you don't want to give them. One of the things I've always told folks, and Melissa and I, our son Damon is an incredible photographer, and one of the things that I said that we could always get him, that's an easy gift to get, is a hard drive. Photographers can always use hard drives. Nerds can always use hard drives. And you can get really good size hard drives, physically small, but a lot of data capability. This one is a 2 terabyte drive for under $100 easily. You can get, if you look around for deals, 4 terabyte, physically larger size ones for $100. So photographers can always use storage space for their images. So that's something you can easily get. Even if he has hard drives, he'd appreciate more hard drives. I guarantee you, he or she wants more hard drives.
Okay.
The bigger, the better. So a photographer, Monty, there's no such thing as too much disk space.
So that's a good stocking
That's
stuffer.
always a good stocking stuffer if
Okay.
you're looking for gifts for the photographer in your life. One of the things that I was telling my friend Susan about was things to not get. And one of the things that she was looking to get, let me just find this thing on, oh no, come on. Don't want that. Go away. You don't want, hang on. I'm getting there. Let me get rid of this, and get rid of that, and get rid of that. And merge all window. Where'd my merge all windows command go? Oh, son of a bitch. It's not the one. Window. View itinerary. How did I lose this page? Oh my god. I hate computers sometimes. Completely lost this page. You're kidding me. I had this page all set up.
Oh, no.
Okay. I have to go back to my text messages to find out the message that my friend Susan sent me. She was looking. She said, "Have you ever used those external lenses for cameras?" And I said, "Yes, I've used the ones from Olloclip and Moment. Those are probably the best ones. If you're going to get an external camera lens for your iPhone, you have to be careful because anything, this is true of all cameras, all lenses, anything you put in front of that lens will block a certain percentage of the light. Now, it may not be a large percentage, but the smaller the lens opening is, that percentage in a ratio wise could be large. So if you've got a great big huge DSLR light or DSLR lens and you put a filter over it, even a neutral filter over it to protect the lens, you're blocking a certain amount of light. Not a lot to worry about. But if you've got a little itty bitty tiny iPhone lens and you block it with another lens, whether it be from Olloclip or Moments or any of the companies, you might be blocking too much light. The other issue is these little tiny ones that fit on iPhones are generally, you have to be very, very careful, especially the cheap ones. If it's under $20, do not buy it. Because that's going to be, I guarantee it's going to be a cheap lens made of cheap plastic or cheap, not well ground glass. The casing itself is going to be cheap plastic. Don't buy those lenses. Those are a complete waste of time. You should be spending at least, if it's on sale, $75, more likely $100 for a lens setup from Olloclip.com. I've used their lenses before, and I like the company. And Moments, shopmoments.com is the other website, the other company that you want to take a look at. Those are probably the two most reputable external lens attachment to your iPhone. But keep in mind, your iPhone isn't designed for these kinds of things. So only get that if the photographer in your life really, really wants those kinds of things. Well, Susan piped up and said, well, what about this thing? And she showed me this. And my first comment was, oh, dear God, why? Why would you want to do this? And Susan said, and let me get this quote for her. I said, oh, God, why? She said, because 12 times zoom. I said, walk closer to the thing you're shooting. She said, what if you can't? I said, then you admire the thing and move on. She said, what about sports and birds? I said, you can't shoot sports or birds with that iPhone. You're just not going to get good quality images. And you check out the reviews of this particular product. It says the image is subject to pronounced shaking at 12 times power, poor quality of attachment, really quite difficult to attach to phone and use it. And those are the 3-star reviews. Poor quality lens, very hard to focus. You simply cannot get good quality glass at that with a device like that at that price point. I think what was the price of that thing? I think it was like less than $100. Yeah, $88. Yeah, sorry, Susan. I really apologize to her. I didn't want to burst her bubble on this one, but do not buy stuff like that. It's just not going to be worth it. And if you look at the funky attachment that thing had on it, you can see why people would say it wasn't going to be good because of camera shake. Something that large, let's see if I can't zoom in on the picture. Something with that much zoom on it, look at the way it attaches to the the iPhone, it's a really looks like a very kludgy kind of attachment. If it's true, and it is true, that the more zoom you have, the more camera or image shake you're going to have on the other end of it. You've all seen when you get binoculars that are really high power binoculars, it's tough to keep the thing in your view because of a little bit of movement of your body translates to a lot of movement down the other end. Same with cameras that have 12, 15, 20, 30 times zoom. Those have to be on a tripod in order for you to do the maximum zoom because your field of view gets very, very tiny. So your field of view at 1 time zoom is out here, but as you zoom in, your field of view gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And at 20 or 30 times zoom, your field of view is that small, so any movement of your camera knocks it out of the field of view. They're just not worth it. They're just simply not worth it. For that kind of photography, you want to shoot sports, you want to shoot birds, sports for high speed or for far away, or at a football game and the players are at the other end of the field, or you want to shoot animals or wildlife, they're up in a tree somewhere, get a real camera with an actual zoom on it, a zoom lens or a zoom on the lens and on the camera, as opposed to one of these cheap knockoff type things. So that's the kind of thing that I tell people, don't buy this. You don't want to get this for the photographer in your life. One of the things I will admit, I would never get this, but I think it's a cute thing. One of the problems you have with photographers is sometimes you don't know what they already have. So you don't want to buy double what they already have. But I'm betting they probably don't have one of these. I just love this idea. I don't want one. I have no interest in having one. But if you're a photographer, especially this is a Canon type lens. They're using you can see on the bottom here. They're using the Canon. It's not called Canon because they wouldn't be allowed to call it Canon, but they're using the Canon font on this. So it looks like it's a Canon lens. And it's kind of a cute little gadget that you might want to get somebody in your life, some photographer in your life that you thought this might be a little bit of a fun thing for them. That's something I would get. Again, I wouldn't want one. I like my coffee mugs the way I have them now.
Damon has one. He has one of a lens cup.
Oh, he does have a lens cup. Okay. Another thing that I would definitely get, check your photographer's bookcase and see if he has this book. If he doesn't, go to our website, yourmaclifeshow.com. I've actually linked this up as one of the Amazon picks of Amazon picks of the week is this wonderful book. This is a book. It's called Beyond Exposure, and it is from a guy named Brian Peterson. And Brian, I got the first edition of this book. Sorry, Understanding Exposure, it's called. I got the first edition of this book probably, I want to say, when did I start shooting seriously? Probably 15 years ago. And it changed my photography. It made me want to be a photographer. The book is really well written. He's a really weird guy. I can't watch his YouTube videos because he's just odd. So I don't watch him on YouTube. But his this particular book, and I think this is the third edition of this particular book, is wonderful. Really, really good examples. He has this stuff. I remember sitting on the plane flying from New York to San Francisco, and I'm bored. I'm on the plane. I've got my Nikon D50, which I had just gotten, and I have this big book. So I'm bored. I'm reading the book. I'm reading the book, and it's very well written. It's the style of the book is nice. It's very it's not conversational, but I understand what he's saying. It doesn't using a whole lot of big terms, and the big terms he does use, he explains quite well. And I'm reading it, and he says, to get this effect, he's talking about the picture on the one side, to get this effect, take your camera and do this. And I was just like, all right, I'm sitting in the plane, I'm bored, I got nothing to do, so I set aperture to this. I set aperture and basically take a picture. I click. So I take a picture of the head of the guy in front of me, right? I look at the picture and went, holy shit, that worked! That thing that he said worked. And I'm going through the book, and all the things that he talks about, he describes so well and so easily, and tells you the effect that you're going to get, and then shows you that effect. was wonderful. I love this book. I think do I still have it? Huh. I don't still have it.
You must.
I didn't. I guess I don't. Ooh. One of the other things you can get, especially for beginner photographers, is there's a whole series of these books, the Digital Field Guide. So what you do is just go look up either your camera or the photographer you want to give this to. Look up their camera and digital field guide. The manual that came with your camera sucks. There's no such thing as a well-written camera manual. There hasn't been a single one in probably the 100 cameras I've used and reviewed and tested and played around with over the years that's any good. Awful, awful, awful. You still got to read it because you still want to know what's in it. But you can always use another book like this, much better written, a lot better examples, explains things a lot better than your camera manual does. So just look up the Digital Field Guide for whatever camera it is, whether it's a Nikon or an Olympus or a Sony, whatever it is. Look up the Digital Field Guide and see if you can't get that for someone as a Christmas present. I guarantee they will appreciate it. The other one is, and this is a personal preference, if only because I know the guy, Scott Kelby's book. Scott Kelby is a very, very well-known photographer and a complete goofball. He is a funny writer. He's got a real goofy, nerdy sense of humor. But his books are really well written and they're very simple. They're just very tips and tricks oriented, as opposed to explaining the process of light and all that kind of stuff. He says, "Do this, you'll get this. Do this, you'll get this." So if you want to get someone a set of books, Scott Kelby's Digital Photography box set is a great set of books to get somebody. Photographers can always use SD cards, the little cards that go into your camera.
Right.
Find out what kind of card that camera has. All you have to do is find out what kind of camera it is, look up that camera online, and that will tell you what kind of SD cards it has. Some cameras, some of the older model cameras or bigger, more professional model cameras will have compact flash, and those cards are quite a bit bigger physically, whereas the SD cards are little smaller ones. So getting somebody 2 or 3 or 4 a set of those SD cards, they can always use more SD cards. I would avoid getting somebody a camera bag unless they already said they wanted that camera bag. If only because there are so many different kinds of camera bags, and every photographer, they're like keyboards, has a particular kind of camera bag they like for a particular reason. And it depends on how much gear that camera guy is carrying around. If he's carrying around, 2 bodies and 6 lenses, he's going to want a different camera bag than I would carrying around 1 body and 2 lenses. So don't buy a bag for somebody unless they specifically say that's the bag I want. This is a good chance to buy a gift certificate for somebody for a store that sells camera bags. Lowpro, Lowpro is my favorite camera bag manufacturer. Manfrotto, which is now owned by the same folks who own Lowpro and Joby. They make good camera bags too that I really like. So those are 2 things that you might want to take a look at. Speaking of Joby, the Gorilla Pod is a really cool little funky flexible tool that you can use for it's hard to describe what a Gorilla Pod does. Let me hang on, I'll show you the picture of it. It's kind of like a mini tripod, but because the legs of the...
They're articulating, so they grasp onto things.
Good. Look at you.
Hey, when I contribute, I contribute.
You do. I couldn't figure out the word. The thing is, these little circles that you see on the Joby are all joints.
It's as if they were joints.
And the white parts on it are little bits of rubber. And so it's kind of, not really, but kind of sticks to things, or at least has more friction. And so you can wrap it around trees or telephone poles or fences or that kind of stuff in order to be able to, rather than using a full-size tripod, you can use one of these.
You can wrap them around, say, for example, a railing on a bridge or something like that.
That's right.
Or a tree branch.
The key for these ones are know what kind of camera the person uses, because there are different Gorilla pods for different cameras. Don't go cheap. If the person has a full-sized SLR, if you get the smaller version of it, it'll just tip over. So you don't want that. You want to make sure you get the right Gorilla pod for the right camera.
And I agree with Monty. The covered lenses, they'd be a great stocking stuffer. Wonderful product.
That was the next one I was going to.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oops.
No. Yeah, I keep calling it curved, but it's
Covered.
KVRD lens caps. There we go.
Or as Monty calls them, those condon thingies that you reviewed.
Right. Camera lens condom holders.
Yes.
The website is KUVRDcamera.com. They've just come off their second Kickstarter. We were a big fan of their first one. And when I say I'm a fan of a Kickstarter, that's a big deal because I hate Kickstarters. So I backed their first Kickstarter. We did a review of them and an interview with the folks at Covered Camera, KUVRDcamera.com is, and this is one of those ones you can buy any photographer, because even if they've got some, they can use more. You know, I've got 4 of them, but what I do now is if I've only got 2 lenses, I've got four covereds, you put them on the back and the front, because they'll cover both sides. So you can't go wrong with the covered lenses. You can go wrong with this device. This thing, I've used these things, and they are utterly and completely useless. Do not buy them. Do not use them. You will lose that lens cover. It's a little cup-like thing that attaches to your camera sling, and then in theory, your lens cap then fits into that.
It's a very good concept.
It's a good idea,
I like it.
But having used it, I discovered the same issues that you have with a lens cap on a lens. That is, that the slightest little tick of the lens cap pops it off. The same thing happens with this. And you're actually more likely to do it with this because, at least in the camera bag, if something knocks your lens cover off, it stays in your camera bag. On these kinds of things, if something knocks it off and you're on grass, say, you didn't hear it fall. And you don't notice it's gone. So don't buy this kind of stuff for...
They must have some that have elasticized, sort of open-ended pockets that you stick them through.
I don't care. Just don't.
No, I'm just asking if they do.
But do buy... If your photographer that you're... Sorry, I got itchy. If the photographer that you're buying stuff for is still using the same camera strap that came with their camera, and it says Nikon on it, or Canon on it, or Olympus, and it goes around their neck and sticks out front, buy them a better camera strap. Either the ones from Peak Design, which I really, really like, the ones from Luma Loop, which I also really, really like, or the Black Rapid straps. Those are 3 straps I've used and really like for various reasons in different ways. So keep that in mind. If they've already got a strap, but it's one of the ugly ones that came with their original camera, get them a different one. Luma Loop, Peak Design, or Black Rapid are the ones that you're going to want to take a look out for. I'm just seeing if we have time. We don't have time to go through too many. One thing that you could do if you really love the photographer in your family, and you really want to make sure that they have the best of everything, you could just buy them a drone. You okay? What's wrong?
Nothing. Nothing's wrong.
I have been teasing Melissa unmercifully for what, about a month now?
Yeah.
I really want a drone. I didn't want a drone before.
No.
I haven't been interested in a drone except until this latest DJI Mavic 2 Pro, or DJI Pro, Mavic Pro 2. Even DJI gets the name wrong. It's a really interesting new drone from DJI. It's got a lot of interesting features that make it easy to fly. Up until I'd say 2-3 years ago, drones were just a nightmare to fly. They were very, very difficult. Flying a drone and then taking pictures with the drone were two completely different actions, and it was difficult to do both of them well. You either had to do what Damon, our son Damon, has an R1000 octocopter, and the thing is a beast. I swear to God, it's got 8 routers, 8 routers on it. It's got basically the equivalent of a DSLR on the bottom of this thing, and one of the guys flies it, another guy takes pictures. One guy can't do both. So then DJI came out with their Mavic Pro line, I think about 2-3 years ago. Then they came out with the DJI Mavic Air last year. Now this year, they've come out with the DJI Mavic 2 Pro. And everything I've been reading about it makes it seem like this is the drone for photographers. Mm-hmm. It's not for drone flyers, but it's for photographers. There's a Hasselblad camera lens on it, which is amazing. It's got a 1-inch sensor, which takes incredible photos. But there's a lot of features on the Mavic Pro 2 that help it not crash. That's quite important.
It is.
It's very, very important.
Especially if it's going to run into a person or
Exactly,
something.
exactly. It's got a lot of obstacle avoidance stuff. It's got a really neat feature that when the battery life gets down to a certain point that you can see on screen, your drone comes home. Mm-hmm. Like automatically comes home. Mm-hmm. There's a button on the drone that says RTH, return to home, which you set this. So say you set RTH to be 100 feet. If you push the RTH button, the drone goes to 100 feet, flies to where you are, and then lands all by itself. So there's a whole bunch of really neat little features. There's a launch. There's a takeoff button. You just push the takeoff button, and it goes up 10 feet and hovers. So you don't got to worry about a whole lot of stuff. So I've been fantasizing about these shots I want to get in Lisbon, about this kind of photography. One of the things that Melissa and I have been talking about this, one of the things I see in drone photography a lot, and our son Damon does this. Him and his partner, business partner. Sorry, I don't want to give the wrong impression. Not there's anything wrong with that. Him and his business partner Rob, take these amazing shots. And if you follow me on Flickr, on Instagram, or on Twitter, you'll have seen some of Damon's stuff. They take these shots at treetop level and above.
Oh yes, yeah.
I don't want to shoot at treetop level. I want to shoot at 10 feet high. I have this visual, the mental image of walking down the street, walking down the seaside of Lisbon with this drone flying 20 feet away but about 10 feet high. Or this image again in my head of the Belém Tower, which is a really cool tower on the waterfront of Lisbon. Melissa and I standing there talking and having the drone slowly rise up, all by itself, by the way, rise up. As it rises up, you see the Belém Tower behind us. Mm-hmm. Lisbon has a replica of, you've all seen the statue of Christ in Rio de Janeiro. You saw it during the Olympics a few years ago. Well, Lisbon has its own replica of that. And you can climb up to the top of it. So there's a drone shot there. You know, there's all kinds of these thoughts I have in my head. So there's all kinds of images that we want to get. So I've been just bugging Melissa unmercifully for the last month. Buy me a drone. Buy me a drone.
Every chance he gets. Would you like anything? A drone.
A drone. And she's talking about like coffee.
Yeah.
Would you like me to get you something?
I'm desensitized now. Doesn't mean anything. But MacMan is absolutely right.
What?
Is that all of these permits and things need to be looked into?
Only if you fly over a certain height, and if your drone is a certain physical size and weight. If you stay under 500 feet, which I would, because I don't want to shoot above 500 feet, then I don't need a permit. Plus, the new software on the Mavics, it downloads a GPS map that won't let you fly in areas that are restricted. So you couldn't take the DJI Mavic to the Vancouver International Airport. It won't take off because it's a restricted airspace. It literally will not let the drone fly in the air. And then if you took it out someplace that was near the airport restricted zone, it pops up on screen that says you are near a restricted zone. Please be careful. And if it won't let you fly into the restricted zone, it's like there's a wall.
No, there. I don't think you could fly it around busy city streets.
No, and I wouldn't do that anyway.
But MacMan's saying we might want to look into Portugal's rules. I think.
Be aware you need a permit from the Portuguese Air Force if you want to fly a drone, take pictures. If you fly over water, you forget flying in tourist areas. Ong T says over water doesn't require a permit. In Portugal, you do. So I'm going to have to do some research on that. Monty says, Shawn with a drone, scared. I don't think I'd be that bad. Especially, with an older drone, I'd crash it and lose it. I guarantee it. But with this one, because with the research I've done, I know you can. Well, one of the things is you can set it so it can't go far away. So it can't go. The range on the Mavic 2 Pro is 8 kilometers. I'm not going 8 kilometers anywhere because if it fell out of the sky, I have to walk to get it. I ain't walking that far. I just turn around and leave. But so you can tell the drone don't fly more than 500 meters or a kilometer away, and you're supposed to keep your drone within eye view anyway. You can also set it not to go too high. So I would set it to not go more than 500 meters away and not go more than 300 meters in the air. So I would keep the parameters very near to me. And landing at it self lands and it self takes off. So for the most part, it's fairly as easy as it can be. It's also got a tripod mode. It's got a sport mode. The damn thing will go 45 miles an hour. I'm never doing that. It's got the regular mode that goes 23 miles an hour. That's okay. But it's also got tripod mode, which means it goes 1 mile an hour. That's me. That's me on tripod mode. I'm good. I don't need to go fast on a drone.
Okay.
That would be good. Got a bunch more gifts to give away. We'll do more on next week's show and your gifts for photographers. If you have any ideas of gifts for photographers that you might want to give or get, or things that you're going to give or get, or you want my opinion, like my friend Susan, maybe I can steer you away or steer you towards getting a cool thing or not getting
a drone.
Not You said I should take donations for a drone.
Yeah, not getting a drone. Not happening.
Ong T. Self-landing is the thing you use. If you don't have things set up correctly, it will come back home at the height that's currently at. Exactly. And like I said, you can set it to come back to...
currently isn't at. I think he meant...
Sorry.
You did a correction.
If you don't have things set up correctly, it will come back home at the height that it isn't currently at. You can set that. It's in the settings. It's called RTH. And if you set RTH at 100 feet and your drone's at 30 feet, it'll shoot up to 100 feet, come to you, and then come down. So you have to be careful. You don't want to hit return to home when you're under a bridge because it'll go up and hit the bridge. So you have to be careful about that kind of stuff. MacBand, seriously, if you're honestly thinking about taking a drone to Portugal, do some research. I will definitely do research, but Melissa won't buy me one, so I'm not taking one wrong.
We'll be fine.
We've gone over our allotted time. If you sent me an email, we'll try to get to it on next week's show.
No prizes?
Yes, prizes. Emails always to Shawn at yourmaclifeshow.com. If you are going to enter in our ZAGG contest, thanks very much to the nice folks at ZAGG who are allowing us to give stuff away on the show. I want to say thanks very much to them for letting us give stuff away. ZAGG is a global leader in accessories and technologies that empower mobile lifestyles. The company has an award-winning product portfolio, includes screen protection, power management solutions, mobile keyboards, social tech, and personal audio sold under the Invisible Shield, Mophie, ZAGG, iFrogs, and Bravin brands. ZAGG products are available worldwide and can be found at leading retailers, including Apple, Best Buy, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, Walmart, Target, and Amazon. For more information, please visit the company's website at zagg.com, ZAGG.com. Technology moves fast, but life moves faster. At ZAGG, they create products that keep up with you to make your life truly mobile. So let's do the prize draw for that. Again, remember, this is for folks who are living in Canada or the U.S. Unfortunately, that's the rules of ZAGG. We can't do anything about that. My apologies if your name gets chosen and you're outside the U.S., we'll try to find something else for you. But so we're going into the ZAGG prize draw. So just give me a sec. Going to go to Matthew Duffy. Matt Duffy, congratulations. You won a prize.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Matt Duffy. You won a
Matt
prize
Duffy.
from the nice folks at ZAGG at ZAGG.com. Matt will send you an email, and you can let us know what product from the nice folks at ZAGG you want to get, and I'll send your details off to them.
Cool.
That's it, folks, for tonight's show. I want to say thanks, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Thanks to you guys for being tuned in, whether you're listening in live or being tuned in to the archive. Special big thanks to the nice folks in the IRC chat room. They make the show as good as it possibly can be, even when I screw it up. As always, this has been... I'll fix it in post. I'll fix it in post. As always, I've been Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
And you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!
Bye.